Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's guest is Devin Burke from the Sleep Science Academy. Health coaches love learning about sleep. Health coaching clients, too, are becoming more savvy to the importance of great sleep. I feel like almost all of the clients I've taken in the last year or so have requested help with sleep. So this topic is important, and Devin takes us through the practice and science of sleep in a way that's a bit fresh. We spend a lot of time talking about sleep anxiety and how fussing about the typical sleep hygiene rules, making your room perfectly dark, cool, quiet, micromanaging your blue light exposure, etc., can actually be a source of sleep anxiety. It's an important idea to consider. We love to see who's listening out there, so take a screen grab of your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. And don't forget, the show notes for this episode and all episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. At Health Coach Radio, we are all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches and helping to drive this exploding industry forward. That's why we started the podcast. Our show is proudly brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute, an approved educational provider with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches, which means our grads can become eligible to sit for the NBHWC credentialing exam to become a board-certified health and wellness coach. And by the way, we have a 100% success rate for that board exam. Our fall semester is off and running, and we're currently enrolling students for our spring 2022 cohort, which starts in early February. At the end of the show, Laura will talk a bit more about our advanced coaching course that will deliver you to coaching mastery. You can always learn more at primalhealthcoach.com/level2. It's time to dive into this awesome episode, and we hope you'll enjoy our incredibly interesting conversation about sleep with Devin Burke.
All right, we got Devin Burke in the house, Sleep Science Academy. Erin and I love a good night's sleep, and it eludes many, so we're super excited to have you on here. How are you, Devin?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for joining us. We'd love to know a little bit more about you specifically, if you don't mind, kind of what brings you here in Sleep Science Academy. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a backstory?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I'll give you the condensed version.
Okay.
But I, like many people, we'll start in reverse. I studied a lot of different things, like probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, the nutrition, the exercise, a lot of psychology, mindfulness. I didn't really know that much about sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't understand how important sleep was. And so for a decade, I'd studied a lot of mind-body technologies, let's call it. And it wasn't until one of my clients that I was working with at the time, more of a high performance life coach, health coach, that was like, hey, I need help with my sleep. This is like really affecting a lot of areas of my life. Can you help me? And it was up until that point, I was like, honestly, I don't know that much about sleep. Like that's like, took it for granted. And so long story short, this client inspired me to kind of do some research to see if I would be able to like help him. The more I studied sleep, the more fascinated I got. I realized not only is there so much going on when we sleep that I had no idea. I was like, what? It just blew me away how much actually happens during the night. But then I looked at what was available for people to try to help them improve their sleep. And that's when I really got excited because I saw a massive opportunity to serve people in a big way. Because right now, the main way people solve their sleep issues or address it or treat it is with sleeping medication, which has all these side effects. It's only meant to be used short term, ends up being used long term. Anyway, so the more I learned about it, the more inspired I got to study it. And I got a couple certifications in it. And then I started to apply some of the other things that I'd studied to really help people address the root causes of why they don't sleep. And it's really interesting. I like to say sleep is a result.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a problem. It's a result. And a lot of people think that sleep is the problem, and it's not. And so the more I kind of unpacked all this sleep science, and then I really started to get into apply some of the psychological tools that I had learned and start to really see a shift with this particular person. I said, well, if I can help one person with this, then I can help, thousands of people or millions of people. And that's really what inspired me to found Sleep Science Academy and really led me to what I'm doing today, which is helping people all over the world get and stay asleep naturally without the need for medication or CBD or anything for that matter. Just really get in touch with their natural body rhythm. And so that's the quick version of the story.
Oh, I love it. And I love that you said sleep is the result, because from a health coaching perspective, or just from a health perspective generally, I'm a huge believer, and I try to instill this in my clients, that your weight gain is a result of the weight gain is not the problem. The weight gain is a symptom of a problem, right? Same thing with digestive issues, brain fog, lack of energy, right? And so people are trying to slap Band-Aids on what they think is the problem, but they're never really getting to the root of what's actually like those things are symptoms. Those are the result of something else. So what you just said right there is kind of right in the wheelhouse of any kind of functional, integrative, holistic practitioner or health coach. So,
and you know what's interesting, just to kind of leapfrog off what Laura just said, is that sleep specifically is, because you said, Devin, like, let's get to the root cause of your inability to get to sleep and stay asleep. And it's like, nobody ever thinks about sleep that way. It's almost like sleep is a tool that I'm going to add to my toolkit to help me get healthy. And it's like, nobody's really isolating it out. Not too many people are isolating it as a thing that itself needs to be kind of solved for.
Yeah. I like to say, a great night of sleep happens as soon as you wake up. And so sleep also can be a reflection of what's going on in your life. This is where it gets really fun and exciting, because it's like, if you're not sleeping well, if you have trouble initiating sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night, that's a reflection that something is out of balance and something needs to be looked at. That's all it is. And then what people do is they make it mean this, oh my God, if I don't sleep, I'm going to die. And, they make it mean this whole big thing. And then they get stuck in the paradox. And this is like, oh God, this is another reason why I love solving sleep. It's so paradoxical. It's the one thing that the harder you try to fix, the worse it actually can get.
Oh yeah.
And then it's the more you try to fix it and those things don't work, it enforces this false belief that you're broken and you can't fix it, which creates more anxiety, which leads to a more hyper-aroused state, which leads to less sleep, which leads to more stress, and on this goes until hopefully you find someone to help you get out of that paradox and address the root cause, which in most cases is anxiety, which can become anxiety about sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleep anxiety is keeping us awake at night.
It's like, and it's so paradoxical. There's so much paradox in even solving sleep. Like, a lot of the things that make sense logically actually keep people stuck, like spending more time in bed. For instance, people that are not sleeping well tend to, okay, well, I'm not sleeping well, so I need to spend more time in bed. No, do not spend more time in bed. You're anchoring your bed with wakefulness. You're anchoring your bed with, hyperarousal, with stress, with anxiety. So a lot of the things that seem to make sense don't actually solve the problem or give you a different result and keep it alive, which is frustrating for people. And it's a lot of what you read on the internet too. It's like, oh, well, do this or do that. Like these little hacks or little tricks, but like, Laura said, Band-Aids, these are Band-Aids, and they don't, they're not going to really solve the challenge. So,
I love what you said about how perhaps the answer to I'm paraphrasing, perhaps the answer to a good night's sleep is in what you do when you wake up in the morning. And I can't even tell you that's so true. So my husband and I owned a gym for years. And for a while he was coaching at Orange Theory, and we were always the early morning coach. which meant we were up at an ungodly early hour to be there for folks from a fitness perspective, which meant we needed to go to bed at an early hour. And there was always a lot of sort of angst and anxiety about being able to fall asleep and get a good night's sleep. And this is something I used to say to him a lot too, is, being able to actually fall asleep at night is going to be the culmination of all your choices throughout the day. And you're absolutely right. It's got to start when you actually first wake up. So maybe that's a good place to start. Erin, what do you think about like what actually leads to what choices, decisions, mindsets, or whatever do people need to cultivate from minute one when they first wake up in the morning to actually create a better environment to sleep later?
Yeah. Because from like a biochemical standpoint, it's like, oh yeah, well, you got to get that early morning light exposure to, trigger your release of serotonin or whatever, your adenosine, countdown timer. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Or are you speaking to that and mindset, mind state stuff?
Yes. Yes. And yes. So, the physical component of sleep, like getting, outside and getting sun, and that keeps the circadian clock healthy and in sync, right? And doing things that don't increase your cortisol first thing in the morning, because we know it's the highest first thing in the morning, right? So, there's physical kind of practices, and then there's also these mindsets of setting yourself up for success, making sure that you're your day's planned, and that you're feeling organized, and all these things that, if you don't have sort of dialed in the beginning of the day, it leads to more anxiety, more stress, kind of feeling like you're behind, that you're not getting enough done, which then people take their days and they bring their days into their nights. And so that's why it's so important to really, again, from as soon as you wake up, a great night of sleep starts as soon as you wake up. That's why. So what you do throughout your entire day is going to dictate how easy your body is going to get into that rest and digest, that parasympathetic state, to then allow it to do what it's designed to do, which is sleep. And there's so many things we do now, that kind of barriers that get in the way of that throughout our days. And we can jam on that if you like.
Yeah.
So one of the major things that I love to talk about, because it's so relevant, and is technology. It's technology. So it is not normal to sit in front of a computer all day long, or on a phone, or on an iPad, or on your couch watching TV. So all of the hyper stimulation that comes from technology, not to mention sort of the lighting as you get into the end of your day, which, the end of the day is also as important as the beginning of the day, as when we're talking about circadian clock and rhythm. And people have these devices, the lights, not even just from your devices, but also in your house. Like, one of the most simplest things that people can do is just start to shut off half the lights in their house as the sun starts to set. It's like so simple and so basic, but it actually can help induce sleepiness, because we're not programmed biologically to be used to all this. These fluorescent lights are the worst.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad for nurses and doctors and people that work in these buildings that have this like toxic light that's really disrupting their circadian clocks massively. And so, so making sure that you have a healthy relationship to technology, not just at night, but also through the day, is a really foundational block to think about and to work through, so that at night you can, again, have that bed buffer from your day to your night.
Yeah, this is such an interesting perspective, because obviously, when you say technology, it's like, oh yeah, all that blue light exposure. But it's like, we're talking about the anxiety that technology, in a sense, like, as well, which, what I love what you're saying is that you said you take your whatever anxiety is left over from the day, you're taking that into sleep with you, and that's going, so it's like, really what we're talking about here is managing your anxiety throughout the day, and managing your mental state, so that you can sort of dust your hands to signify completion of a day when it's time to get into bed, rather than taking all that stuff with you.
Oh my gosh, Erin, if people just understood that, they would sleep so much better.
Yeah.
But it takes discipline, it takes determination, and it also takes understanding the importance of sleep itself. Because that's another big obstacle. Like, I like to put people in 3 different buckets. There's people that have chronic insomnia this is really bad. It's like affecting their health, it's affecting their relationships, affecting their performance. They're like on one side of the spectrum. Then there's this huge middle piece of people that don't understand the importance of sleep. So they watch Netflix, they do things like eat late at night, they have alcohol right before bed, they do all these, lifestyle things that aren't conducive to sleep, but they just, because they don't really understand, or maybe they haven't connected and care enough about sleep yet. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the like biohackers and the people that are like obsessed with sleep optimization. And these are the people that have the chili pad on the bed, and they have the blackout shades, and they have
my chili pad.
That's all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. I would say probably all 3 of us maybe might be closer to that end of the spectrum, I would imagine. But for each of these kind of buckets or groups of people, certain recommendations would actually be counterintuitive and not productive, depending on which sort of segment we're speaking to. So it's really important, I think, to kind of like frame that up. So for some people, like for instance, if we're talking about the bio optimization of sleep quality, some of that information could actually keep people stuck in chronic insomnia. Example. Perfect example. So people that have chronic insomnia think that sleep hygiene is going to solve the insomnia. And actually what that can do is that can keep them stuck in insomnia. And the underlying belief of that is that it becomes a control thing, something they're trying to force and control. When you try to force and control something, it creates what?
Anxiety.
Which then creates
insomnia.
Right. So force isn't something you can control, and in trying to force or control, and in trying to do so, you actually make the problem worse. Now, if you don't have insomnia and you're in a curious state and you're like, okay, I understand the importance and power of sleep. Let me see if I can take the 1/3 of my life that I'm going to be in bed and make it better so that the other 2/3 can be even more amazing. If you have that type of curiosity mindset, and it's not so much like you're trying to force and control it, it's not a problem you're trying to fix, you understand that it's like, okay, this is something that I'm going to experiment with, and let me see how that sort of impacts my mental clarity and the quality and depth of my sleep. Totally different conversation.
Yeah.
Can you chronic insomnia, is this like a diagnosed state, or is there's a cluster of symptoms that would describe a person with chronic insomnia?
Yeah, great question. So there's 2 types of insomnia. There's onset insomnia, which is trouble initiating sleep, and maintenance insomnia, which is trouble staying asleep. Now, it becomes chronic if you have issues 3 days or 3 nights a week for longer than 3 months, and it's impairing your daytime functioning. That's the technical diagnosis for chronic insomnia. So a lot of people have chronic insomnia, but they don't even realize that they have it. But that is sort of the technical diagnosis. And then there's acute or transient insomnia, which can happen for, a week to a couple of weeks. But once it's over that 3-month point, that's really when it becomes a habit and sort of like a psychophysiological pattern that then it becomes a problem for people for years or even decades.
And I'm just, because you kind of touched on like this goes sort of undiagnosed, because it's like people are a lot of times so disconnected to the quality of their sleep. And I've heard clients say, oh, I'm just a light sleeper, or I don't need much sleep. And they're kind of sweeping it under the rug. Right.
Yeah. So those would be people in that middle bucket where they don't really understand how important sleep is and how it impacts our hormones and how it impacts our memory and how it's literally like just this incredible gift that we get to do every night. I would say those are people that just don't realize how important it is. Like I believe sleep is the foundation of health. And so, and the reason why is biologically, if you think about it, you cannot eat for a couple of weeks and you're okay. You cannot move your body, exercise for like a lifetime. Most people do, but try going a couple of days without sleep, you're destroyed. Your body just starts to shut down. The only thing I would say that's maybe more important to sleep would be like water and air. But that's from like, if we're talking about it in terms of like pure importance, sleep is like foundational.
Okay.
I would say more important than nutrition and exercise. I mean, I'm a little biased, but that's,
sleep is number 2 on my list after food, but it's like, it's a close second. It might pass.
So you mentioned there were kind of 2 forms. One is being able to fall asleep, but issues falling asleep. And then the other is not being able to stay asleep. And I know people that have struggled with both at different points of their lives, and some that struggle with both at the same time. Are there different mechanisms that are causing each of these, or are they kind of related? They're just manifesting differently.
That's a fantastic question. And it's a hard one to answer because everybody's different. So in most cases, onset insomnia usually is from stress and anxiety. Maintenance insomnia can be from poor sleep hygiene. It also can be from stress and anxiety. It also can be from going through like menopause or something like hormonal. It also could be from like a health condition. So it's kind of tough to answer that. And it can come and go. Like sometimes people have waves they'll have weeks or months where they have issues getting to sleep, and then they're able to get to sleep, and then they have issues staying asleep. So it can flip flop around, but really the underlying root causes are usually the same.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like recently I've heard more like I can fall asleep, I just can't stay asleep. I'm hearing that more often. And I'm wondering how much of this is because of the crutches they're using to fall asleep. They're taking melatonin, or they're having a glass of wine or something to fall asleep at night. Oh, I can fall asleep. Okay. But, they're waking up at 3:00 in the morning and can't fall back asleep. I was a sufferer of this back in my past career, that I think was, my drug of choice was a glass of wine that now I realize just disrupts my sleep. I basically pass out, right? And then whether it's a blood sugar thing, whether I'm dehydrated, whatever it is, it was like clockwork. By 3:00 I was up and I could not fall back asleep. And to this day, Erin knows this about me. If I drink wine, I have a terrible night's sleep. Just one glass, especially if it's too close to bedtime. But I'm hearing that more and more from people. Is my problem really is staying asleep?
That's I'm so happy that you just brought that to everyone's attention, because a lot of times we just don't connect with like, oh yeah, the reason that I don't have trouble initiating sleep is because I'm using something to get me to sleep, like wine or marijuana or whatever it is. And people just sort of like dismiss that. Right. So that's a really, and wine, if we're talking a little sleep science here, actually disrupts REM sleep, rapid eye movement, which is where short-term memory gets shuttled to long-term storage. That's a deep state of sleep, really important for emotional stability. It's kind of like emotional first aid. And that specific stage of sleep happens mostly in the 4th quarter of the night. So right before you wake up, that's why we wake up and usually remember our dreams. And alcohol and also marijuana can disturb that specific stage of sleep, which will lead you to then feeling not as refreshed in the morning. So, I mean, again, and you also said something really, I think, so important. You said like a glass of wine kind of just makes you like pass out. There's a difference between sedation and sleep.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And so like this is with the sleeping medications like Ambien and Lunesta, clonazepam, all these things, trazodone, all these medications. A lot of them are the sedatives, and it's like I tell people, it's like you're drinking half a handle of vodka. Like you see somebody passed out on the floor after drinking half a handle of vodka. They might look like they're sleeping, but they are not sleeping.
Yeah.
They are not sleeping, and it's not the same as sleep. And that's why people wake up and they feel groggy, they feel cloudy, they feel irritable. and then they have that crash, and then there's blood sugar crashes, and they're in the fridge and they beat themselves up because they have no willpower. And then they start to, it's like, it can get pretty ugly fast.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things to unpack and so many different little avenues we can go down here. So I'm just trying to think of this in terms of, okay, like as a health coach, the clients will say, they want help with their sleep. So as a health coach, it's like, what I'm hearing you say is maybe the place you start with your clients is, well, tell me about your day. Tell me how your day went. Like, let's get to the root cause of whatever anxiety might be lingering by the time it goes to bed. And it's so interesting because I think I would start with, tell me what happened from like supper time onward. Like I'm just gonna focus on sleep hygiene. Where did that go wrong? But what I'm hearing you say is like, ask the client about their day. So that's interesting. So that's something I already learned. Another thing that I get a lot from clients is when they, to Laura's point, wake up in the night, I'll go into, well, something's preventing you from getting into deep sleep, because if you were in deep sleep, theoretically, you wouldn't wake up in the night. That's my line of thinking. And I'd love to have you correct me on that. And I'll have my clients say, do you know what woke you up? Was it the cat jumping on your head? Was it a sore knee? Was it, did you have so my thinking is if a person was in deep sleep, nothing would wake them up. So the problem is they're not in deep sleep and their sore knee is waking them up or their bladder is waking them up, but they're not waking up because their bladder woke them up. The bladder woke them up because they weren't actually deeply asleep. That's kind of where my brain goes. Tell me how far off base I am or what you think about that.
Yeah. So we're talking a little bit about, like, we need to talk about sleep architecture.
Yeah.
So throughout the night, we go through several different stages of sleep, and we'll just keep it really simple, like light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And so every 90 minutes, we're going through a sleep cycle. Okay. And so what can happen for people is they go in a cycle. So it's light sleep. They start to lose consciousness. Their body temperature starts to drop. Then they're getting into a deep sleep. Then they're getting into a REM cycle. And then they might pop out of a cycle altogether. Most times people don't come so much out of that cycle that they become conscious. Sometimes they do. Okay. And so you can't manage what you don't measure. So this is why it's really important. If you want to improve your sleep, you need to have some sort of measuring device that is semi-accurate to really understand, well, what's actually going on through the night as far as your sleep architecture. What does that look like? And now we have these amazing devices that are pretty darn accurate. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're pretty close. And the one that we use at Sleep Science Academy is the Oura Ring. It's a ring you wear on your finger. It's very much gauged just to sleep. But to answer your question, people, yes, people that are in pain or they're not in a deep sleep can pop out of that cycle and then be conscious. That's not really so much, I don't see that so much as abnormal. What's abnormal is when people can't initiate sleep back after they're awake.
Okay.
So like it's totally normal for people to wake up and be like, oh, okay, I'm kind of like in a light sleep, or I'm sort of semi-conscious. But if you have issues then going back into that next sleep cycle, that's actually where it becomes more of a challenge.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. And actually that is literally the problem that people come to us with. It's like, once I wake up, I can't get back to sleep.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. Because I mean, you kind of touched on this. Did we press record and you were talking about how, I think we had been talking officially when you said lying in bed trying to sleep is like the worst thing you can do, right? And so give us some tips or suggestions, or what you encourage for people who are now we've woken up in the middle of the night. What do we do?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I can share with everyone. So the first thing is what they call stimulus control, which simply means that if you wake up and you're awake longer than 20 minutes, and this is something you don't want to look at the clock first and foremost, because that creates more anxiety, but actually remove yourself from the bed and bedroom, because if you stay in the bed and bedroom, you're anchoring your bed and bedroom with wakefulness. So you remove yourself from the bedroom, you go do something boring in a low lit room. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's stretching, maybe it's knitting, maybe it's meditating. And then once you feel sleepy, you go back to bed. What you don't want to do is wake up and and go on Instagram. Yeah, exactly. Or check your email, or, really, you don't want to get into your head. You don't want to start thinking about, oh my God, getting frustrated, or getting like thinking about all the things you need to do, or all the things that you didn't do that are incomplete. That's what kind of happens. The most common question I get from people all over the country, all over the world, is, how do I shut down my mind so that I can sleep?
Exactly.
And the truth is, your mind does not shut down. It's actually, in some stages of sleep, more active when you're asleep than when you're awake. But what you can do is do things during the day, again, going back to that, during the day, so that your mind doesn't rev up so much, and you can learn actually how to manage your thoughts and understand that you're not your thoughts, right? You have thoughts. You're not your emotions. You have emotions, and really start to understand how to create the space in between your thoughts, and how to see thoughts for what they are and not get attached to those thoughts, which then creates anxiety, or, if you're hanging on to the past, depression. So practices like mindfulness are very, very important for improving sleep. And clinically, there's a lot of evidence that actually shows that it's very effective for people that have insomnia or sleep challenges.
So how do you, as a coach, then how might a coach help support somebody practice mindfulness for something like this?
Laura, there are some amazing apps. I mean, this is where I like to, unless you're a mindfulness expert, and maybe the people that are listening to this have studied mindfulness, maybe they've had a mindfulness practice for years and they really have done the work. But if not, there's like incredible apps. Now, some of my favorite ones, my favorite one of all time is called Waking Up by Sam Harris. I mean, some people resonate with it, some people don't. But there's, if you want a little bit of a lighter, kind of more fun, there's the Headspace app. There's these awesome, technology that you can use to really start to train the brain to understand that you're not your thoughts, and to understand all the sort of mind stuff, to then not have this racing mind, and understand the things that you're doing, like maybe drinking coffee that revs you up, or maybe you're having a difficult conversation while you're in bed with your partner, your bed partner. Like, okay, that's going to rev your mind up. Or maybe you're watching a movie on Netflix that's like super action packed, and now your mind is there's all these like subtle things that we do that actually can rev up I call it a mind rev. And so if people can learn how to start to decompress the mental energy throughout the day, it won't be like the pressure valve won't be so full at the end of the day. And then the mind starts to sort of relax, and there's less thinking. Less thinking is better towards the end of the day, not more thinking.
Yeah, the pressure valve metaphor is so good for that, because it's almost like in the high pressure, highly bombarded kind of time we live in, it's like the pressure builds, and it's like it gets to a point where it's like, I just got to call it a day. I'm just gonna and we go to bed with this thing fully primed. But what actually we should be doing is having a period of time, and this comes into, I guess, sleep hygiene in a sense. It's like there has to be a period of time where we release that valve and let the pressure off before we're getting into bed. We're not just building pressure and then going to bed and hoping to wake up in the morning and it's all sorted itself out. We have to be more intentional about releasing the valve.
You said a great word, intentional.
Yeah.
That's really the practice, is how intentional can you be about knowing your mind body, and knowing when you're starting to kind of like, I think of the body as like a battery, and it starts to build up a charge. And it's not always a bad charge. It could be a good charge. Maybe you're like really excited about this new project that you're working on, or you got some new clients and you're really excited about serving these clients. And it's sort of like this excitement. That's a charge. And so that's good, but there needs to be a discharge, because if not, that energy kind of builds up. And again, it's like a pressure valve. So we call it in Sleep Science Academy a bed buffer. So that's like buffering your day and your night. So having a EOD, an end of day routine, to close out your day is so important. Just like how you'd start your day, hopefully with some sun, some meditation, maybe some water, some prayer, some gratitude, ending your day with something like that It doesn't have to be that exact same routine, but something where you're physically shutting the laptop down, physically closing the door on your office if you work from your home or something like, these little things make a huge difference from a mindset standpoint, which pay off in terms of amazing sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rituals, really.
Yeah. I used to find when I was having this issue with waking up, I finally started just keeping like a pad of paper by my bed or a journal by my bed. And when I would wake up, my mind would start racing with all the things that I had to remember to do. And I found if I just got up for a minute and wrote it all out, just wrote it all down, I was able to fall back asleep again. So I don't know if that equates to a different type of mindfulness practice or that release valve kind of structure, like finally just letting it all out, that I could find it calmed the anxiety enough that I'm like, okay, I won't forget that. Now I can just kind of go back to sleep.
That is such a great strategy and technique. It's getting your thoughts out on paper slows your mind down.
Yeah.
So Laura, staying in bed and jotting that down is still a useful tool. Because earlier you said, take yourself out of the bedroom and go do something boring. But this is also a good, useful strategy in your mind?
Yeah. So I would recommend, I don't like when people do things in bed besides sleep and sex.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it really depends on the person. So like if removing yourself from the bed and bedroom to go kind of like write out your thoughts is more stressful or anxiety inducing for whatever reason, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. But really, the more you can anchor your bed and bedroom as a sacred space and as a place where literally that's where you go just to have sleep and sex with your bed partner, the better.
Yeah.
So like I'm a big believer in like anchoring spaces with activities. It just helps mentally. It helps us sort of get in these habits, and our mind body system love habit, love routine. It thrives on that. So, but here's the thing, experiment. That's another huge thing. People always are looking for like, what's the silver bullet? Tell me what to do. I'm like, okay, it depends. It depends. There's not a silver bullet. Just like there's not one, I believe there's not one way of eating that works for everyone. There's variations. I mean, there's some principles, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with sleep.
Yeah. It's so funny. People do want those, give me the top 10 hacks. And it's like, but okay. So your bed buffer concept, now we're getting into this idea of sleep hygiene. We talked sort of adjacently about like light quality. By the way, the light quality thing, this is so important to me. My home is like a cave. My home is a cave. I don't even have LED lights.
Wow.
I actually had to look it up when you were talking about it. This is a little funny anecdote. On January 1st, 2014, the Canadian government, I live in Canada, the Canadian government banned the production of incandescent light bulbs. And do you know what I did?
Bought them all up.
I stockpiled them.
Wow.
I have 6,000 incandescent bulbs in a shed.
Are you?
Oh my gosh, 6,000.
That is amazing. Can you send some to Florida?
I'm telling you, I was mocked relentlessly, and now people are like, I wish I could get my hands on. Why is your home so warmly lit? It's like incandescent, baby, all the way. Anyway, so
that is awesome.
I know, right? Thank you. Finally,
you just got way cooler in my book.
Thank you. It was a steal of a deal because those things were going for like $1.50 for a 2-pack of bulbs, and I was like, I'll take them all. Anyway, so we talked about sort of setting up your light, so kind of almost mimicking this idea of a sunset, and of course, then not assaulting your light receptors with the blue light of your screens if at all possible. What else is on the list of sleep hygiene for you?
Yeah, I mean, having a ritual to wind your body down is really important. Most like Netflix is the number one thing that's keeping people awake.
Yeah. And
those damn shows, they just keep playing right to the next one. You really just have to have such discipline, and they're so good.
They are.
So really though, having the discipline, and this really comes back to, again, the conversation of like knowing how important sleep is and how big of an impact it actually can make in your life, to be able to like shut it down. There's a great little technique. I share this in my book. I also love to share this with clients and on interviews like this. It's 3-2-1 sleep. So 3 hours before bed, you want to stop eating. That's because most of the deep sleep happens the first quarter of the night when we eat. That gets in the way of us getting into that deep sleep.
Yeah.
2 hours before bed, no more work. So this allows the mind to stop thinking, problem solving, sort of starts to slow the mind down. And then 1 hour before you like to be asleep, that's when you start like a ritual or routine. So this could be going for a walk, stretching, a warm bath. This could be, journaling. This could be, something relaxing that literally is maybe boring, that just allows your body and mind to start to settle down.
Yeah.
And so 3, 2, 1, sleep. It's pretty simple to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because we glorify busyness so much that I'm sure some people who heard, well, a whole hour of doing nothing before sleep. I don't have that kind of time. Isn't that?
Yeah. That's really the challenge with the technology, because we have access to like all this. We could work 24 hours a day. We could be connected with friends and family 24 hours a day. We could be, learning things 24 hours a day. I mean, we could do it. It takes such, I would say, discipline and really deep understanding to really disconnect, because it's hard. And these apps are just so addicting too, like Instagram and Facebook. I mean, there's a whole documentary on Netflix. It's amazing.
You
On this
mentioned
whole thing.
Netflix. Yeah, you mentioned Netflix. I was listening to, I think it might have been BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits. I think he mentioned it in his book. One of the books I'm listening to right now, anyway, said that the founder of Netflix said literally that their greatest competitor is sleeping.
Wow.
Sleep is that's why when you're watching a series, like a bunch of episodes on Netflix, they don't play the opening credits anymore. They've taken that out so that you can literally just watch episodes back to back without realizing an episode has even ended. They're actually competing against sleep, which is just such a. But one thing that you said that I think is really important, because you mentioned like it takes discipline, but it also takes, I think you said, like understanding. It's something along those lines, and it's like, I think what I see in people is that there's a complete disconnect from like who we are. And I'm getting into like some existential sort of stuff here, but like as a human animal, we are not ourselves if we're not sleeping.
Right.
And so you can say, I'm busy, I'm important, I'm an influencer, I've got to be, I'm checking my TikToks or whatever, but it's like, that's not who you are. Right. That's not even remotely who you are or what you are. That I think there's a major disconnect in modern culture there.
I agree with you. Yeah, 100%. So much of what we do is hyper ego driven. And if you can do more soul-centered activities and really connect to like the truth of who you are, and remember who you really are, it allows so much more flow and peace and ease and understanding to then nourish yourself and live more in harmony versus live in a way that's, it's like you get caught in all the sort of core wounds, the I'm not good enough, and all these other like patterns that we all have that we're trying to work through and heal. And, 100%. I think that's very relevant to bring up.
Well, your 3, 2, 1 sleep, there's so much about pieces of that all feed each other as well, because I don't know about you, but if there's a night where I stay up later than I normally do, like say on a weekend and we're watching a show, I'm much more inclined to want to snack on something, go eat something when I'm staying up a little bit later than normal and I'm watching a show. Like those two things kind of go hand in hand. And when I work with people that have problems sleeping, this is always a habit of theirs, that they're winding down at night, they watch their show, and a bowl of ice cream and potato chips or something like that. So this comes out when we're talking about why they can't seem to lose some weight or why they keep gaining weight. And they keep telling me, God, my biggest trap is always at night, every single time. And so this whole sleep hygiene thing is also impacting the other goals that people have, like the energy they need to get a decent workout in, like the control over their appetite and being able to just not eat all these unnecessary processed food calories that are causing other health problems and weight gain. By the way, it's also disrupting your sleep. All of this stuff goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so important to connect that. And another thing, it's also it's not about perfection, right? It's always about progress. And to have those nights where you have Netflix and the ice cream, I think sometimes people get caught in these patterns, these like, oh my, it's like all or nothing thinking.
Right.
And that isn't helpful. Like I have nights where I watch Netflix and eat ice cream and I know all this stuff. It's like, that's part of life.
Yeah.
But if you do that every night, okay, now
Exactly.
we have, and usually this is really relevant to share. I call it the stress triangle. So I came up with sort of these patterns that people fall into that create the unresourceful habits, let's call it. So there's people either lash out in anger or frustration, which leads to a loss of relationships. They zone out with TV, with movies, or with work, which leads to a loss of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or they numb out with food, alcohol, and drugs, which leads to a loss of health.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stress triangle. And so we all have this stress blueprint. And we learn this stress blueprint from our culture, from our parents who didn't know how to manage their stress and their states. And we all have a stress blueprint or a primary pattern. And sometimes it's all three, but usually it's like one or two. Like for me, my big stress pattern is the zone out. Like if I don't follow what I know, if I'm letting that tension and stress build up, I'm not doing the things that I know to do, I'll like, find myself on my phone and like scrolling. It's like, what do I need in that moment? It's like, okay, I need something right now. I need a break. And this is not productive, right? This thing is not productive to allow me to really have a real break. But identifying that pattern for yourself and then understanding how to get out of that triangle is really powerful, not only just for your sleep, but just in general for your health and for your life. It's such a simple thing, but I think when people kind of have a frame of this triangle, it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think something can be simple, but not easy to fix, because I see this pattern with clients all the time where they have a drink every single night, sometimes the minute they walk in the door from work, and so now I've got alcohol right close to bedtime. Sometimes they're late dinner eaters. They're not eating till 7 or 8 o'clock at night due to their work schedule, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they eat early, but they have dessert, or they, an hour or two later, they have something else to eat while they're sitting on the couch watching. Here's another one, the news. That is super frustrating for a lot of people. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, or how can you not be, right? Or getting caught up into these shows. My show of choice right now, Brett and I are watching Queen of the South on Netflix, and it's all about the drug cartels. You can imagine like the at every single episode, right? That's when, just like Game of Thrones, when I was into Game of Thrones for a while, like every episode had but I tried to go to sleep after that. Holy cow. So I can personally imagine people that I know who have all three of those things at the end of the day, and then wonder why they can't sleep. And then they're chugging back some sort of sleep medication to fall asleep, but then they're still waking up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. It's addressing with Band-Aids. Again, those are the Band-Aids, the quick fixes. I think when one thing that can be so helpful for people is the more you increase your awareness, the better you sleep and the better your entire life gets. It's just like do things that increase your awareness, meaning like being like noticing things in your environment, like being literally practicing being present. It's such a simple thing, but most of the time we are all thinking about what we need to do. So we're in the future, or we're thinking about what we didn't do and should have done. And it's like, it really is, when you learn to be more present, you really can recognize all these patterns, and then you can start to unravel them, and you start to question, well, is this leading me more towards what I want or more towards what I don't want? And then with that level of mindfulness or presence, then you can make more intelligent decisions, which then leads to better outcomes. So it really does, like the more we can cultivate awareness and presence, it just makes everything better. When your sleep gets better, you have the energy to be more present. So it's like sort of the cyclical thing that just really pulling one of these levers affects all the other levers. But I really do believe it starts with that awareness and sort of that level of presence to really see things more clearly than what we tend to see.
What I'm picking up in this conversation is, as a health coach, clients will ask me about sleep. As a health coach, or as a melatonin necklace, my clients will ask me about sleep because I know sleep. But I know it from the biooptimization perspective, like get your chili pad, get your Oura ring, wear a melatonin necklace, cool dark room, buy out all the incandescent light bulbs. But what I'm picking up here is that sleep coaching, like it's almost a disservice for me, a health coach that focuses on nutrition, to like bleh, like sort of word vomit my myopic view of sleep, when really it's a huge, full, big picture undertaking. Like truly, sleep coaching is a specialty. And if you're gonna, if a client comes to you with a problem sleeping, it's like almost need to refer out to somebody who's going to go into this deep level of their awareness, their intention, their mindset, their mindfulness practice, anxiety, dealing with anxiety. It's that's what I'm learning, is that this is a massive category of coaching in and of itself.
I'm so happy that that came up for you. I agree. It's a deep well, and it really, it's like anything. Like, you can go pick one thing and go really, really deep on it. And the deeper you go on that one thing, the more you realize about that thing, obviously. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm really all about and up to, and in the future are going to be creating is a training program to train health coaches to be sleep coaches.
Cool.
So that's in the making as I scale my business and continue to, help people. That's just another way of helping more people, right? Is train people that can go deep on this one subject and really understand the psychological and physiological underpinnings that solve the problem. So one thing I did want to bring up, because I think this is really relevant and will be helpful for people listening to this, the 3P patterns. So there's so there's 3P patterns going deep that I discovered that keep people stuck with their sleep, and we'll touch on each of them. It's the perfectionism pattern, the problem solver pattern, and the pedestal pattern. Now, I want to start with the pedestal pattern first, because this is really relevant. And this one's probably the trickiest one, because people put sleep on a pedestal, and it deserves to be on a pedestal. But by putting it on a pedestal, you actually create more anxiety and pressure about it, which then leads to worse sleep. And here's the tricky part, because it's actually true when you don't sleep, your cognitive function goes down, your energy goes down, you're more irritable, you're less present. That's all true. But if you put sleep on a pedestal, like it's the ultimate end all be all, if only I could sleep through the night, I would be this rock star person and all my problems would go away. People do that. And then it creates all this hyper sort of stress and not the kind of sleep pressure that we want to create. The other type of sleep pressure that we don't want to create, which then keeps them up. So that's one of the big patterns.
Okay.
The second one, the problem solver pattern. So this is another big one. We work with a lot of high performing people, like intelligent, diligent people that really care about what they're doing, and they're problem solvers. A lot of them are entrepreneurs or business owners. Maybe they're coaches as well. And they're all day, they're solving either other people's problems or, putting out fires. Sleep is not a problem that can be solved. And the harder you try to solve it, the worse it can get. And so that's the other pattern where people, it's not the problem. Sleep is not the problem. Sleep is a result, or lack of sleep is a result. The last one, the perfectionism pattern. I know this one well because I'm in recovery, perfectionism, but people that try to perfect their sleep. And this is where like the hyper sleep hygiene, like, oh, I have to have a hot shower and my room has to be pitch black dark and there can't be any sound. And I need an EMF blocker in my room in order to sleep. And they're like this perfectionist sort of mindset actually creates more stress and anxiety, which keeps
Yeah.
people up. So those are the 3P patterns that really can keep people stuck.
Oh my gosh.
So is the root of, sorry, Erin, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was going to say, is the root of kind of helping to alleviate these patterns in different places, or do they all kind of come from this, let's work on mitigating the anxiety throughout the day is a starting place for all of these? And for each of these patterns, what do you recommend for each of these to try to help overcome them?
First and foremost, it's just awareness that you have them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so going back to what we were talking about earlier, having that awareness, that mindfulness, that presence about yourself this is where it's so critical, because until you actually can see very clearly how your perfectionism is causing poor sleep, or how your problem solving is creating poor sleep, or how you're putting it on a pedestal, until you can see it crystal clear that is going on, nothing changes.
Yeah.
Once you see it clearly and you're like, oh my God, I'm all 3 of those things. Help me, please. Like, I don't want, then it's a matter of understanding, okay, well, what the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say a pattern, I mean a thinking pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain thoughts that go in your mind with each of these patterns that are very relevant, and probably the same thoughts that you've had for a very long time. And probably you're not just doing this with your sleep.
Right.
There's many other areas of your life that you're trying to problem solve and perfect, and you're, maybe not so much pedestal, but problem solver and perfectionism pattern.
Mm-hmm.
If it's showing up in your sleep, guaranteed it's showing up in other areas, and creating a lot more stress. So sleep can be like also this amazing tool to then like realize, oh wow, there's some lessons like that can apply to these other areas that are creating a lot of frustration and stress or suffering or whatever you want to call it. So identifying the thinking after you have the awareness, okay, what is that exact thinking pattern sound like?
Yeah.
And it's going to be different for everybody.
Right.
And that's really where like the coaching piece comes in, like helping a client identify, well, what is the perfectionist voice sound like? I like to do persona work personally. So, and it's really amazing to do persona work and actually give each of these people like a name, just like sort of Beyonce has like Sasha, I think, when she goes on stage.
Yes.
So then you can understand when you're in that persona,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's not serving you.
Yeah, as you were sharing these thinking patterns, it was like my wheels are turning, like this is so ripe for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Like where else in your life are you a problem solver? Like, let's talk about where perfectionism crops up for you in your life elsewhere outside of trying to fall asleep. And that's what I think is so cool about coaching, is that somebody can come to you with this granular problem. I'm struggling to sleep. And it's like, we're looking at everything. So let's go. Yeah, this is ripe for coaching. So I'm grateful that you're going to create an educational platform to train coaches. Tell us what Sleep Science Academy is currently. Like, what are you doing currently? Because we know you're going to be eventually creating this online, maybe coach certification, but what else do you guys do?
Yeah, so right now it's primarily helping people who are either on sleeping medication and don't want to be on it, or they have chronic insomnia, either onset or maintenance insomnia, and they want to solve the root issue. So that's like our primary offering right now. And
sorry, is that, so you're counseling clients sort of one-on-one?
So I have a team of coaches. So I have a team of trained coaches who I train in the methodology. There's a certain system and methodology that we use that's a bit unique, pulling from all the different background tools and techniques that I've learned over the last decade. So there's a certain process and a system that we know works. And so right now like I said, I have a team of people that help clients go through this system so that they can retrain their mind and body to sleep naturally again.
Yeah.
And we offer that online, and we help people in some cases all over the world. Usually we're people's last resort, to be honest. After they've tried all the sleep hygiene, maybe they've tried psychology, maybe they've tried cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and they're still not sleeping. A lot of times we can help people that have tried, they feel like they've tried everything and they still can't sleep. We're usually the ones that that can help those people.
Nice.
So do you think that it comes from the methodology that you teach? What do you think is the difference maker?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so order and process is really important. And also the skill level and the care of the coach. So just like you can go to two different doctors, maybe they went to the same medical school, but one really cares and one really goes deep, and the other one's just in it because, whatever, he went to medical school and he gets a nice paycheck. That makes a difference. So, but also the system and the process. Like, so when we work with a client, there's 3 phases that we take them through, and the order makes a huge difference. The first phase is the mind phase. So this is unpacking all the thoughts and the beliefs they have about sleep, about what happens when they don't sleep, about their resistance and fear around feeling discomfort and pain, all these like deep patterns that people have no idea are going on. That's where most of the results come from. Then we go into the body phase, which is increasing adenosine and sleep pressure and helping resync the circadian clock through certain tools and techniques. The last phase doesn't solve insomnia, but it's still important, is the environment phase. And that's addressing sleep hygiene. Room cold and dark, making sure you have, proper situation going on. Mind, body, environment, in that order.
Yeah.
It works.
And I think that's a great framework for coaching generally, right? With health coaching, I think a lot of people think I'm going to go see, first of all, if they even know what a health coach is, right? But even folks that I talk to that are interested in health coaching, they are still kind of thinking health coaching is all about fixing someone's diet, giving, all this other stuff. And okay, depending on the situation, that's a piece of the pie. But really at the end of the day, it's what is it that you really want? How did you get here? Let's really get clear on, perhaps it is. So, recently I've had a lot of women recently who they already know what to do. They know what to do. They're not doing it. And so what they're coming to me for is help doing it. So we need to get to the reason why they're not doing it. What's going on in your head that's stopping you? What are the conversations that you're having with yourself that is you're just stuck in your tracks, right? What about the conversations you're having with other people? What kind of support are you having? Like the whole mindset piece around your relationship with food and health. And, Erin and I both work predominantly with women. We both deal with a lot of the psychological side, body image, relationship with food problems on a regular basis. And I don't care how well designed a meal plan might be for somebody. If we don't solve those other things, it's a temporary fix, like everything else they've tried.
That's so true. And it's the way that I look at it, it's like whatever someone comes for you for help with, that's the top of the mind problem, like the tip of the iceberg. And people just want to focus on the tip of the iceberg because maybe they don't have the tools, or it's just not in their awareness that they have this whole like unworthiness thing going on or whatever it is, or it's too scary to like look at that. But it's like, well, if we just give you the meal plan and whatever, nothing's going to change, right? So whatever type of coach you are, I think whatever you specialize in, that's kind of just what that kind of hooks people in to then give them what they really need. Because you can stay at the surface and give people, plans and things like that. And there is a place for that, right? Getting the structure and sort of the what to do. But you said it so well, like people know what to do, but they don't do what they know.
Yeah.
And so why not uncover the barriers that are keeping you from doing what you already know? And that's where the real gold is.
Yeah. Well, that's what I picked up when you shared your 3-step approach. It's like, this is addressing all the barriers that could possibly exist, but in a really particular order that's really important. And I think, the meal plan, if we were taking the meal plan example in the nutrition coaching space and how that doesn't solve problems really for anybody, it's like the same thing as like a client isn't coming to you as a sleep coach saying, I really need help with my dim light melatonin onset. Like nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying, solve this one physiological little problem for me, we're good to go. Like they're articulating a deeper struggle, and we can't go shallow with it. We can't just focus on here's the science behind sleep, go. Here's all the information I have about sleep that I can possibly, foist upon you. Now go, there you go. That's how it works. And I think sometimes coaches, we can get a little bit mired into the science and the physiology of stuff, but that's not the order of events in which a client really needs to be brought through.
Yeah, I like to distinguish between a consultant and real coaching. So consultants telling you, okay, here's the plan, here's what to do. A coach, right, as you guys I'm sure are experts at, it's asking questions, uncovering, understanding helping the client get connected to the resources they already have. And I think there's, a great coach knows when to be a consultant, but mostly wears that coach hat.
Yeah.
Because people really do at the end of the day know what they need to do or what they're doing that's keeping them from change or a different outcome. And it's just a matter of creating the space and asking the right questions in order to help them connect with it, to then take action on it.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's a fun conversation. I think in the interest of time, we'll start wrapping up. So I know that a lot of our listeners are going to want to learn more from you and possibly keep their eye out for the certification program when you launch it. So give us a rundown of where folks can track you down.
Yeah. So YouTube is Devin Burke Wellness, putting out a lot of sleep content now on YouTube, Instagram, Devin Burke Wellness, sleepscienceacademy.com for those people that are interested in or have sleep challenges. But yeah, those are good ways to connect. LinkedIn. I mean, mostly I'm on YouTube. I like doing videos. It's fun. So.
Well, actually, sleepscienceacademy.com. So this is the sort of consumer facing thing. I think that's important for coaches to know too. If you get a client who's in your roster who's really struggling with sleep and you feel out of your depth, please refer out to an expert. Don't feel like you need to muddle through that on your own.
Absolutely.
And please let me know if you do refer someone, because I will gladly, if they end up becoming a client, send you some really nice bamboo sheets. So that's kind of our referral program. We send people like $400, these amazing luxury bamboo sheets when they refer us a client, and that client actually signs up with us. So just kind of little
behind the bamboo sheets.
That's a little carrot I'm dangling out there for anyone that wants some new bamboo sheets. Send us your hard clients.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one to get your arms around. I know people that have struggled for years, and, all the sleep hygiene ideas, these are typically not my clients or people that know I'm a health coach and they just ask me one-off questions. I'm sure any professional that offers a service, whether you're a sleep expert, an attorney, a doctor, a health coach, whatever, people in a conversation ask you questions that just, again, it's all about, we got to stop just providing the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Right. And for our health coaches, we hammer home, know your expertise, know where your secret sauce really is. And if something's just not in your wheelhouse and it's really a challenge and it's a barrier for your client to move forward, it makes sense to refer out. It really does. So I think you could be a great resource for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting it out there and for allowing me to share some knowledge today.
Yeah, we loved it. Thanks so much, Devin.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach Certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 844-307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.